Hello, my many friends, and welcome to Hazards. What's a hazard? We're gonna find that out. Hooray! I'm so happy to be back.
Alright, I'm so happy to be back. Yippee! Woohoo! I like soup.
Oh, hey, it's me from the future. Further future than the last guy. By the looks of it, it will be 4 videos. That last guy, he's a little neurotic. Too many hits to the head. I also invest in orange shake carpets. Those are making a comeback. Just warehouse fulls of them. You're gonna be rich, I promise you. Okay, bye bye. Whoa, that was weird, although very enjoyable. Series favorite, Future Me, making a return. Huzzah! All right, so what is a hazard? We have our situations, our behaviors, and we have our conditions. Situations or behaviors. They're temporary circumstances that are in the workplace. They could be things like working short staffed, having an angry visitor. Our conditions are the state of workplace environment. So, clutter, wet floors, icy sidewalks, poor lighting. And then we have our things, like the equipment that we use, cytotoxic medications, electrical cord in the middle of the hallway, things like that. So, what are situations and conditions or things? They can refer to the physical and psychological state of the environment, the materials and equipment used, and the processes to get the day's work done. Right on. And here we have our health hazards and our safety hazards. Two things we need to distinguish very carefully. Health hazards, acute or chronic health effects. That's what it causes. A health hazard is a physical, chemical, biological, radiological hazard, which may cause acute health effects in exposed employees like dust, heat, ergonomics. So if I'm sitting like that, I'm going to hurt myself over time. Chemical absorption like cytotoxin, chronic. That's what it causes. Uh, some examples of health hazards would be noise-inducing hearing loss, or overuse of muscular skeletal injuries, or MSIs for short. I'm currently have plantar fasciitis, and this is why I'm making these videos. It is what it is. And then we have safety hazards. A safety hazard is a substance, process, action, or condition which may endanger the immediate safety of employees, like a chemical spill or a shear point. So if there's like an edge sticking out, or if you get cut by a knife, things like that. Musculoskeletal injuries is also under this category. Or a worker trips and falls, breaking their arm. That is a safety hazard. Alrighty, and then we have our sources of hazards. We have three: people, equipment, materials, and environment. Let's start with the easier one. We'll go with equipment and materials. That relates to tools and materials used on jobs that can be sources of hazards. Some items are inherently hazardous and become hazardous over time due to inadequate maintenance or storage. And then we come to environment, which refers to the entire workplace. Usually, it's consequences of a poor organization and maintenance that can contribute to deterioration, performance injuries, and illnesses at times. So, things like poor exhaust, walking surfaces, temperatures, hot and cold, and variables can be hazards. And the hardest one to change, people. Now, this comes down to behaviors, and behaviors and culture. So if you cultivate like a good safety culture, mwah, no problem. You're golden. But if you have not done that, then changing people's behaviors and their inclinations to not do the safe options, that is a definite hazard. So the category people refers to employees, residents, families, visitors, contractors, usually comes from insufficient training, poor communication, and taking shortcuts because of pressure to complete the job in a short period. Yeah, that happens. It happens a lot. Um, Usually when I need well, back when I did management stuff, When I needed my folks to change their behaviors quickly, I like to bribe them. Bribery is good uh, in Minecraft. And here we have our four categories of hazards. We have our biological hazards, are chemical hazards, physical hazards, and psychosocial hazards, sometimes called psychological hazards. It's not wrong. So we'll start off with biological hazards. So our entire thing into COVID the past 3 years, that's a biological hazard. Mold, fungus, viruses, bacteria. Our chemical hazards, uh, basically the cleaners that we use or the laundry detergents that we use, drugs that we give to our patients. Those are chemical hazards. Physical hazards are anything that affects your body, so resident aggression, wet floors, pressurized systems, excessive noise, extreme temperatures. Those all are physical hazards. And then we have the psychosocial hazards. So that's what happens in your mind. So employee stress, employee fatigue, the days you wake up and you're like, I shouldn't have got out of bed. I suddenly woke up and I have a credit score. That's weird. Compassion fatigue, harassment and bullying. That's a big one. That's a bad one. Always report that if that happens. Oh boy, it's homework time. Woohoo! Activity 2-1. Identify the primary hazard category you feel the hazard belongs to. I'll bring up the next slide. We'll do it all together. Yippee! All right. So here we have our list. So we're going to take these and we're going to put them into the categories biological, chemical, physical, psychosocial. So some can be two, some can be one. It's like aggressive client, primary category. Some people might say it's physical. Some people might say it's psychosocial. Some people might put physical first and psychosocial second, or vice versa. Depending on the circumstances, uh, that's true. It's all subjective. You're taking empirical data and you're putting it into that, but you're playing it in your head. What this is, do your best. Usually not any wrong answers. So we will go to the next one, the hot laundry room. So what do you think it is? Correct, probably. Hot laundry room, I would put personally. So I would put physical first. I put psychosocial. Uh, Being in a hot place in a long time, especially at your work, oh my goodness, you want to die. You are Dunskies. All right, floor cleaner, chemical. Used needle. Um, I'd go with chemical, maybe physical if there's no cap on it. Repositioning a client. I would go with physical. Icy sidewalk, physical. Maybe a little bit psychosocial too. Like if you know that sidewalk's icy and you're thinking back to yourself, man, I remember that time I biffed it last time. It'll bend your frame a little bit. Upset family member. I'd go psychosocial first, maybe physical next. But again, it's all empirical data you're using. Wet paint, chemical. Uneven floor surfaces. Uh, Physical, mm, maybe psychosocial. Like if you know those floors are uneven and if you've hit them before, even if you've fallen on them, it'll stay up there. Short staffed. I'm gonna put psychosocial, though I'm not bitter. Wet floors, physical. Contaminated linens. Biological. If you don't like contaminated linens, maybe psychosocial. Depends on if you have a lot of healthcare experience. Verbal abuse. Psychosocial. No one likes being called names. Doesn't matter how rough and tough external appearance you have. Someone calls you names, you hurt a little bit inside. You cry at night. Restricted space entry. I go physical. Unguarded blades. Ooh, yikes. Physical? Yeah. Cytotoxic medication. Chemical. Yeah, that's it. We did good. Everyone got 100%. A plus 10 out of 10. Woo! You're all rock stars. On to the next. And what are the most common incidents and injuries? Well, I gotta say, number 3 may shock you. Not really. In continuing care, the WCB Industries synopsis reports the list of the most common types of accidents as number 1, overexertion. It's actually overexertion all across the board. Senior supportive living, also exertion, number 1. Number 2 is falls. Number 3 is bodily reaction and exertion. I fell victim to that. Number 4, assaults, violent acts, and harassments. We've all been sucker punched. Number 5, exposure to harmful substances. Oh, that's interesting. I never would have thought. This means common hazards that should be identified and controlled prior to work being performed would include such things as awkward postures and repetitive motions, use of excessive force, cords, cables, fall mats, and other trip hazards, biological and chemical substances that could cause injury or illness, verbal abuse, response behaviors. And start with a good foundation. All right, Amber, give us the minutia, the micro details.
Oh boy. My time to shine. Look ma, I'm famous. Hazard Assessment Policy and Procedure. Creating and reviewing hazard assessments requires an investment in time, and, as with anything, you will want that time to be well spent with tangible benefits. Establishing policies and procedures provide your organization with guidelines and expectations of behavior for all levels of staff. Therefore, when developing an organization's policy and procedure, it is important to not just look at the mechanics of the development process but also how an organization will consider the incorporation of the 3 fundamental rights of workers into that process. For a hazard assessment policy and procedure, consideration should be given to the following. How workers will know the potential and existing hazards at the worksite. How workers will know about the controls they will use to protect themselves from the hazards in the workplace. How workers can inform the employer about hazards or controls not working. How worksite parties will be informed of any changes to hazards or controls at the worksite. The mandatory enforcement of the use of controls in the workplace. How it is that all worksite parties, managers, supervisors, and workers, will be part of the hazard identification and control process. How the HSC will participate in the process to fulfill their legislative duties. What the process will be if workers find a hazard that is too dangerous to continue with work. 3 types of forms are essential to an effective hazard assessment and control process. Those forms include hazard assessment documents. As required by Part 2 of the ABOHS Code, hazard assessments are to be signed and dated. The hazard assessment documents are to be retained for a minimum of 3 years, however keeping them longer will allow for tracking and measuring the effectiveness of the safety program. Hazard reporting form. Despite the best efforts of the hazard assessment team, there may arise hazards that they did not identify because of the nature of the work environment. These reporting forms assist in identifying those new hazards as well as how effective controls are. Incident investigation form. Incident investigation forms can also assist with identifying new hazards and determining if controls are working as intended. Remember, incidents are caused by exposure to a hazard, therefore, looking at these are essential components to the review process of hazard assessment. Investigation forms could have a reminder on them to review the appropriate hazard assessment. Scheduling and training. Often many employers underestimate the time that is needed to do a comprehensive review of hazard assessments. If an organization does not already have hazard assessments and are just creating them, it often takes double the time many employers allot. The question that you might be asking is, why do these take so long to do? Since these documents are a foundational piece of any health and safety management system, employers need them to be as thorough as possible. That way hazards can be controlled, reducing the chance of an incident. If an incident was to occur, it would potentially result in a less severe incident. To meet participation requirements during the process, it will take some time to gather information, schedule, and create meaningful participation opportunities for staff. It will be important to have key employees, such as supervisors and HSC members, who are leading the process trained and competent so they are able to explain the process to other staff and help answer questions and solve conflicts that may arise during discussion. Training should include both theoretical instruction and practical application components. Other staff who are participating in the hazard assessment process should get a brief orientation before beginning, which may include types of hazards, how to read and fill out the form, the risk evaluation scale, and any other pertinent information. Important note: while it is important to garner the most staff participation possible, it may not be logistically possible. Not all staff necessarily need to be involved, however all staff should be aware of the process, the assessments related to their jobs, and the hazard controls put in place.
Fantastic job, Amber. A round of applause. Yay! Your mom will be proud. So, that's the end of Unit 2. What'd you think? So, in this unit, we covered things like health hazards versus safety hazards, conditions and situations. We covered sources of hazards, people, equipment, environment, categories of hazards, so biological, chemicals, physical, psychosocial, primary occupational health and safety hazards, and policy and procedure. Policy and procedure is usually government dictated and is also backed up by like the corporate rules too, so you're double good. So I will see you all in the next video. Ta-ta!